Hello everybody, James here. It's Ask Dutch Anything, episode 68. This is the episode that's now coming out on a Sunday now, apparently, because it was on a Tuesday, now it's on a Saturday. But Dutch's demands, he's like, he was really famous for making demands.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston. There you go. You've got like a rider of things. His daughter brings him, like, Whatsits or whatever it is. I don't know what he's eating. And then he's demanding different days as well and putting all the blame on him. So Storytime with Dutch Mantell is now going to... What's Sonic?
It's
like a burger place.
Yeah.
I've heard good things about Sonic.
Very good.
There you go. So there you go. Well, Dutch is munching. Much.
Hey, Sonic might want to be a sponsor here.
We mean the Hedgehog or the...
Both of them.
Yeah.
We'll take them all.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, it's the Seattle Supersonics, if you could... reinvigorate that name as well, so we'll have all the Sonics sponsoring us. So, that being said, we'll do the short version of the intro. So, Facebook, WSI Network, links are in the description, all the socials, blah, blah, blah. Books, Dutch has two, the World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. If you want them signed, you go to dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, including signed hats, signed WCW trading cards and such. But the most important email, of course, is questionsfordutch@gmail.com if you want your question asked and answered, potentially by the Dutchman himself. And that is exactly what everybody on this list has done. And we are starting with Tim from Treesap, Alabama. What a wonderful town name.
What the hell?
I know.
I have no idea
where
that
with
is.
oil trough.
I have no idea where Treesap, Alabama is.
Well, there you go. Well, Google it. We'll Google map it afterwards. Right, hello, James and Dutch. In the mid-'80s, a tough man named Ron Starr wrestled the Southeast. I recalled he was a good wrestler and he wrestled in several territories. Do you have any stories on Rotten Ron Starr or his wife Peaches? Thanks, guys. I'm grateful for these trips down memory lane.
Well, Ron Starr, he was from Atlanta. I know that. I met him right when he broke into the business. And he was a pretty big guy. But he was a wild bastard. He would go out and he would get hammered, and I think, if I'm not wrong, he had the girl named Peaches, I think, but sometimes there would be more women joining that group, and I was invited to come and party with them one time, but I turned it down, being such a Christian fellow that I am. So I didn't see it, but yeah, he was he was out there, Ron Starr, but he never really had any trouble. He never fought a lot, or he just he was a partying type guy. But I never heard any bad stories about him.
He was, I'm just looking at his match listings, Stampede for quite a while, but later on in his career, he mostly appeared in Puerto Rico as well, including a brief time in 1997, which I believe you had been booking at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Good hand?
Yeah, real good. But he wasn't in the business that long. Maybe 10 years, maybe, I think.
I'm
wrong?
I'm going to disappoint you now. He used to be Bobby Starr. He debuted in 72. So he had a 20-year stretch and then briefly came back in 97.
Yeah, but he never really, you never heard his name that much. He may have been in the business for 20 years, but hey, I meet guys now and they said, hey, if I bring up how long you been in the business, they say, 25 years. What? Never heard of you. But maybe they 25 years on the independent circuit, maybe. They did a show in 82, and then they didn't do any more shows to 93. Well, that's 11 years, but they were still in the business. So they still include that. But
next one, Shay, London, England, long-time listener here and first-time emailer, with Dutch being a real driving force behind the TNA Knockouts. When he returned to WWE, were there any female talents who asked Dutch for advice, or what did Dutch think of the WWE Women's Division at the time? Keep up the great work. Send you both best wishes. Cheers. So, were there any women who ever came up to you? Did you even realise you were writing for TNA? And
you listen, unless you're an agent, don't even attempt to tell anybody in WWE, actually nothing, See, most of these girls, they're not longtime fans. They just recently became fans in the last, I don't know, 10 years. So, and my heyday was way before then. So, and they're not going to ask. And now the next question is, did you contribute anything? No, I didn't. Because unless they ask, I don't contribute anything. My old saying, stay in your own lane. Now if I had a good idea for somebody, I damn sure wouldn't give it to a girl. I'd give it to one of the agents. And so if they took it and they wanted to present that angle at a meeting and let it go through channels, then it get back there, that's okay too. But I never gave it directly to a girl. Now I did that in TNA because that was my job. But you could give angles to some of them. You couldn't give angles to all of them because they didn't have the experience to actually take that and do something with it. Now, you take the ones like Charlotte, Flair, and all the girls up there Bailey, who's been around a while. They can take it and make something out of it. But you can't take just a young girl and just give her an angle to do something. Now, you can teach her how to go to the ring if they'll listen. But I'm saying if I don't know them, I don't know how in the hell they would know me. But, yeah, I never really gave any of the girls up there anything, or anybody really.
Apart from Jack, of course, I imagine, because you travel with him. That's a question, and I didn't bring this up last week. Did you see on SmackDown, which I know you review SmackDown, but we're talking, I know this is coming out on Sunday, we're talking the SmackDown prior to the most recent one. There was a face-to-face or a one-on-one interview, sort of like via satellite kind of thing, with Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton. And I was wondering, it seemed that... Oh, you didn't see that? Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed that Charlotte was just going off script, and then Tiffany was very much staying on script.
I think if Charlotte went off script, she messed up Tiffany. Tiffany looked like she didn't know what to say. And that's understandable, but I don't know why they let that out. Unless it was purposely done that way, where, Charlotte was like talking down to her, and it didn't make Tiffany look good at all. I don't think. Hey, did Charlotte Flair get some? She had a little plastic surgery, didn't she?
Yes, she looks like.
Well, she doesn't look like she did before she left.
No.
So, I don't know.
I mean, I guess for women more than men, but I'm sure a lot of men feel the issue as well. Is like you're out there in your trunks or whatever it might be in front of an international audience of millions of people and thousands in the arena every day. It must be so easy to become, get body dysmorphia or, just really self-conscious constantly about that. And I'm wondering if Charlotte's just got overly self-conscious with comments or whatever, that now she's just gone a bit overboard with the plastic surgery.
Well, women are different than men. You can say anything about a man. They don't give a crap. But women, a little bit different. So when they're getting in the ring, and I'm sure Tiffany, and that's why Charlotte wants to look as good as she can. Tiffany wants to look as good as she can. But what Tiffany is battling now, she's battling she's battling a legend, really. And she wants to be remembered, whatever the finish is, she wants to be remembered for that. And she wants to look as good as she can. So, but that's an issue they have to work through, not me.
Next one, Greg says, first and foremost, I'm glad you are feeling somewhat better. Could you please provide an answer to why some wrestlers wear jewelry in the ring, specifically necklaces that are big? I was watching Randy Orton versus Carmelo Hayes and noticed Hayes' necklace and the rectangular shaped object. Seems this would be dangerous. I also noticed some wrestlers will tape their married ring fingers too. What do you think? Thanks.
Well, it used to be you couldn't wear any chains in the ring. What I'm seeing now is the chain. It doesn't come far, but still, if you pull a guy's head into your chest and it's a cross, that cross could go into his eye. to me, that is a safety issue. And so you couldn't wear rings, couldn't wear like bracelets here or a watch. I mean, you wouldn't wear a watch anyway. But see, they wear that in the ring to look cool, I guess. But to me, we used to have to pull all that off. You weren't allowed to go in the ring with that because it was a safety hazard. It was.
Have you noticed that? I don't know if it was the late 90s, but there seems to be a proliferation, if you like that word, Dutch, of wrestlers wearing earrings in the ring. And I think at some point, like in death matches or whatever, there's been on purpose earrings ripped out just so that it split the ear and bleed everywhere. But it sort of just seems like madness to me.
Well, I wonder, do football players play with earrings in their ear? I guess they do. Earrings is not too bad. But the chains, yeah. Now, the short chains are not so bad, but the long chains, you wouldn't wear that in the ring. You won't see the long chains in the ring because they're going to be flying around. So I wish they would stop the match, DQ the guy because of his long chain, and send him out. That'd be different.
Did you tape up your wedding ring?
No, I took it off. That's what I did.
Next one. George says, hi, Dutch and James. Dutch, you went from babyface to heel a number of times, especially in Memphis. Did you have a preference? Did the crowd being with you make you work better? And the truth was, I think you worked both the same way. Dirty Dutch and Good Dutch worked the same way.
Well, yeah, I do like both ways, according to who I'm working with too. Because as a heel, the heel controls the match. Unless you're a babyface and you're working with a green heel, you kind of help them out a little bit. But I like working both ways. I actually like working babyface more, especially in Memphis, because of the gimmick sales. Heels don't sell many pictures, but babyfaces do, and that made a difference back in those days. But you really won't see, if you have guys who are babyfaces all their career, they're dying to be a heel. John Cena right now is dying to be this heel because now his latest interview on Raw, he talked right to that crowd, talked right to them. It's not me, and he blamed them. It's you. No matter what I did, it was this and this and this and this, and he said, and he called them toxic. And they're sitting there listening to him too. And he made a couple of good points. So, and I really enjoyed his interview. I enjoyed Cody's interview. And when they got out of there, actually, I think the anticipation of their WrestleMania match increased during that interview. And especially right after it, I think.
How did you work different? I think we've asked this before, but I mean, did you change anything you did pretty much when you were a good guy versus a bad guy?
Well, I was more a bullshit heel. You know, you just you blame the people. You know, as a good guy, babyface, you try to bring the people with you. You're with them. Well, all of a sudden, now you're not with them. And of course, I'm like saying that it's not my fault, it's your fault. You made me do it. And it's according to what you did and who you did it against. See, with me and Lawler has went back and forth, or did, back and forth so many times. He was still just the same guy almost every match. Actually, I almost got to that point where I went back and forth and back and forth. But yet, when they threw us together, now the people said, wait a minute, who are we going to cheer for? Who are we going to boo? And we went into Memphis. I remember we had 3 sellouts out of it. And it was the longest. We had 3 matches. But it was the longest period of time for those 3 matches than I've ever had. It was like once a month. And then we would do whatever we did. And then we'd have a month to kind of build up the interest for the next match, another sellout, and then the next one, he'd build up again. I really, really enjoyed that series with Lawler, and at the end, I think we both walked out of there. I was a heel, and he was a heel. I was a babyface. He was a babyface, and it's whatever the fans wanted. So, but they paid their ticket to see it, and when they left, they weren't disappointed.
Who did you trust? So when you're a babyface, obviously, as you say, the heel calls the match traditionally, unless they've got no experience. Who did you trust most to call a match?
You mean individual people?
Yeah. For you, basically.
Well, when I was working, actually, I called it as much as the heel did, because I was working with really inexperienced heels a lot of time. They were learning, and Lawler wouldn't call a lot of stuff either. I would call half of it. He would call half of it. But after you work with a guy for so long, I worked with Randy Savage, I bet, for 10 months. It was almost every night for 10 months. We got so used to each other's styles, we could call spots in the middle of spots and change it. Because I got used to the way he worked. He got used to the way I worked. With Savage, you better be in shape. He would wear your ass out. And he was 110 miles an hour all the time. See, when Randy started, I'm telling a story about Randy now. He was Randy Popo. He morphed into Randy Savage, and later on, he morphed into Randy Macho Man Savage. But but every example of what he was, or what name he called himself, was pure Randy. And Randy was Macho Man Savage or 24 hours a day. He got up, he was the Macho Man. When he went to bed, he was Macho Man. Even at home, if somebody was like, "Ooh, yeah," he'd answer the door. And he was the Macho Man. So he's not gonna recognize that voice. And now it's a famous voice now. So, but Randy developed that and nurtured it, and now there's only one Macho Man, and that's Randy Savage. He did a great job with it, but he was great in the ring. And when I had matches with him, there was no rest holds. It was go, and I'd go 30 minutes, 40 minutes with him, and I enjoyed it. I really did.
Next question. Spencer says, hello, Dutch and James. Recently, I've discovered some matches of Memphis wrestler Phil Hickerson. I have heard his name mentioned by several Memphis greats over the years and never really thought to seek out any of his matches. I eventually did come across a tag team match with Phil Hickerson and Dennis Condrey. I already knew how great Dennis was, and after a few minutes I began to realise that Phil Hickerson may be extremely underrated. I did not expect someone who looked that terrible to be able to move that well and have really good matches. My question is, does Dutch have any good stories about Phil Hickerson, and could he think of any other lesser-known great wrestlers from years ago wrestling fans should try to find? So Phil Hickerson, then I've heard his name come too.
Jackson, Tennessee is about 70 miles from Memphis, but it was east. That's where he was from. And Phil Hickerson, when you saw him walk in the dressing room, you say, "Who's that big fat guy?" Because he had a big belly and. But when he got in the ring, he weighed like 270, maybe more. But this guy worked like he was 210. He could take slams, and he could take bumps, and he could take backdrops, and you could throw him over the top rope, and he moved like a lightweight. I mean, he was, if you're looking at it, and like the guy said, you knew how good Dennis Condrey was. And if you didn't know anything about Phil Hickerson, you say, why would they put Condrey with that guy? Till you saw him get in the ring and do the stuff. Brother, he was good. He was probably one of the best big men that I've ever seen. Now, of course, later when he was probably young in the business then. Later on, he was still heavy. He had to slow down because he'd blow up. But he was really, really a great heel, and he was so ugly. Not, I mean, he just looked like that you wouldn't like him, and he was a hateful bastard in the ring. And he presented that air of, I just don't like you, and so you don't like me, and you don't say nothing to me, and I'll slap your face, or it's just people getting in the ring, and you just looking at him, don't know a thing about him, but you don't like him because he's giving off that aura of being a smart ass, and he was. So good interview too. He'd go out there and he'd call the people dumb, dumb and stupid, and he got over. He was really a good heel. So I agree with who wrote you the letter there.
I think he was called Spencer.
Spencer, you're right. You're right on.
Do you remember when, like, it was in the late 80s when Phil Hickerson just turned up one day with a Japanese flag painted on his face, and he was now P.Y. Chuhai or whatever?
P.Y. Chuhai. P.Y. what? P.Y. what?
P.Y. Chuhai.
Well, it just goes to show you. People knew it was a bullshit, but he did it so well.
I was going to say, did people just obviously know it was him? Because, I mean, he was doing
No, they knew it was him, but what he said was that he has been studying Japanese culture, and he actually went over there and he studied, and now he had the flag, and that got over. He got it over. Because, anytime he would get stuck, he would say, as the great scholar P.Y. Chuhai would say, and he would say something. He'd just make it up. And then he just started working under that gimmick and got over. I loved to work with him like that. And he would reach for a gimmick like Tojo. The people would just jump out of their seats because he was just reaching for something. Nothing was there. He never pulled nothing out, but it's just a thought that he could do it.
Funnily enough, he did actually go to All Japan, like, just beforehand as well, so someone must have given him the idea there.
Well, it was good.
He
did go to Japan.
He actually did go to Japan, yeah. So in 89, Hickerson, this is just on Wikipedia. Anyway, basically, it was a faux Japanese character and was managed by Tojo Yamamoto, who adopted the name P.Y. Chuhai, a pun based on Yamamoto's former ring name P.Y. Chung, and the alcoholic drink Chuhai. So there you go.
Oh, that's where it came from.
Did you wrestle him?
1,000 times.
Oh, did you?
Oh, he's great. Never would hurt you. Never would do nothing. So like a bastard. All you had to do is just let him stomp the shit out of you, and we'd go on the floor, and he'd argue with the fans out there, and he'd have those old women up in his face. He was very entertaining to watch too. He didn't have the heat that I'm gonna kill you, or we need to kill that guy. But he was fun to watch. He really was.
How good was the Dennis Condrey tag team with Phil Hickerson then? Because I've heard stories that they were, just a bit too early for TV, so they don't really get brought up as a great tag team, but they were very good.
Oh, they were great. Because when you put two talents like that together, one accents the other one. And they put a lot of tag team stuff together. They were very good. They were. I don't know how long they were together. I don't think that long. Less than a year, I think. I'm bad on stuff like that, but they had interest on them going to the ring, and the people believed in them. They believed that if they won the tag, even though they cheated, of course, they were still a good tag team.
Next one, this is going to be a video I need to sort out as well. Dorothy says, "Hi guys, who is the guy who portrayed Ric Flair, purposely misspelled for a reason you'll see in a second, in the NWA interview segment with Terry Funk and Jim Ross before Sting came out to confront him? Thanks." So, we're going to watch this video together 1 second. Jim Ross, about to introduce Terry Funk.
And if that is true, we certainly look forward to seeing the Nature Boy back here in center stage here at Superstation TBS. Here comes Terry Funk now. I'm somewhat leery, a little dubious of this situation. Where is he?
Well, he's here. Ric Flair is here tonight, and I want to tell you people that we should bring him out tonight.
I really liked late 80s Terry Funk. Just before he did the hardcore thing. It's an underrated period for him.
Let's go ahead and bring Ric Flair down. Yeah.
All right.
So who is playing Ric Flair?
Music?
Well, let's see here.
Run down Ric Flair.
The crowd is standing here, standing ovation. Oh, God.
Looks like the long-lost Mulkey.
That's not Rick. This is ridiculous.
Why, sure, that's Ric Flair. Get over here, Flair. Get over here.
He tripped.
Get over here. All right, let's hear the Ric Flair scream one time. Whoa. That sounded like a woman. Let's hear a Ric Flair scream like a man. Whoa. I guess you just don't have it anymore, Ric Flair. I know your injury's bad, but it's not as bad
I don't know who that is.
as you say it is it, Ric Flair? No. It's because you are ill in another way. How are you ill? You have a bad stomach, don't you? Yes. What it is you have lost your guts. And Ric Flair also has a bad back. Take off the robe and show him your back. Wait a minute. My, what 2 weeks of hiding in a closet does to a person. My, doesn't Ric Flair look... Now,
What do you say?
I don't know, muted.
Effeminate.
Get
Something
it
like
off
that.
now and show them what's wrong with your back. Now turn around. Oh, Ric Flair has a
great interview.
yellow streak down his back.
This is ridiculous.
There we go. Okay, so
That's
absolutely.
good.
Oh, there
I
we go.
don't know who that is. Probably some guy they picked up off the street or just a guy hanging around. But good interview, good story, because he's talking about him, and he's got a guy impersonating Flair, and it was good. I think it got my attention, and that's been 40 years ago, and it still got my attention.
I love the way Terry Funk delivers everything. He just like every word is like 3 times longer. Ric Flair.
That's the way he talked, and he was good too. Really, really good.
There we go. I'm sorry, Dorothy. We don't know, but
We don't know. I've never seen that guy in my life.
But we watched it and it was fun. So there you go.
We did. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. Next question. Chris from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Hey, Dutch and James. I recently heard Tony Schiavone use the word promo while commentating on AEW programming. Number one, do you think this falls into the category of inside wrestling lingo that announcers shouldn't say on TV, or am I being too nitpicky in this day and age? And number two, was there any instance in the territory days when an announcer may have slipped inside lingo, and how was it dealt with? Thanks a lot.
What was the word?
Promo.
Oh, promo.
I mean, even WWE are using it these days, for that kind of
it's
thing.
I don't see any harm in that. I really don't. But what else can we do? We've already told the people that it's set up anyway. We've already taken them backstage. They've set in on all kind of stuff. So now you're going to use a word like promo to kind of hurt the business. You can't hurt this business. Hey, we tried to kill it back in the 90s. We tried to kill it. Couldn't do it then. Then the 2000, they didn't do any better. We tried to kill it then. Did a half-ass job of it. And then all of a sudden, it's just had a rebirth here in the last 3 to 4 years with WWE changing hands and changing owners, and then AEW trying a different brand. This business cannot die. It will not die. I mean, we've tried to kill it, and you just can't do it. So as soon as you put something on they halfway like and that they want to see, they'll come.
Next question.
Makes sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Michael from Griffin, Georgia. Dutch, can you talk about your days in the Georgia territory and some of the towns like Griffin? Thanks.
Oh, God. Carrollton. We didn't go to big towns. They don't have big towns in Georgia. They got Atlanta, and that's it. You go to Columbus, and Columbus is okay, but it's not a big town. You go to Macon. Macon's not a big town. That was the next two towns. And you go to Augusta. That's probably, a decent sized town, but not a big town. It's not like the New York territory where you got Philadelphia and you got New York, you got Boston and you got Philadelphia and you got Pittsburgh and you got Baltimore. You got all those big towns. But see, they had Atlanta and the rest of them were just small country towns and maybe 50,000 population, 70,000. And Augusta and those other towns, they would have more. But yeah, this very, very small towns. But back in those days, everybody knew who you were. Everybody. Because it was a staple for years and years and years for Georgia Championship Wrestling to come on at 6:05. Then they kept that when, WWE and WCW were both on there, 6:05. And when they actually had two promotions in Georgia, we would do, I think we would do our TV in the mornings, I think, or maybe the other group would do it in the morning, say 10 o'clock, 11. We come in at 2. We'd do ours at 4. We'd run into each other. They were leaving. We were coming in. So, and that's what made Ted Turner and WTBS is because of his 2 hours back-to-back different companies, the wrestling show. It paid a lot of bills. And he's even said that. He said, without wrestling, we probably wouldn't have survived. But that was the only TV show in Atlanta that had wrestling at the time. But it was good, and I appreciate I got my start there, so I got a soft spot in my heart for them.
Are there any towns like Griffin or other ones of Georgia that stand out for any particular reason, good or bad?
No, not really. They were all equally small and equally the same, basically. Some of them were like chicken coops. I mean, big. I think the one in, not Griffin. Griffin was just a big old like warehouse type deal, but big. And they could race cars out in there. They'd do that, and they would just have stands like grandstands on all 4 sides. The one in, I can't remember the name of it. It was like it was a smaller little arena, but it used to be a chicken house, and they took it and revitalized it and made it like you could rent it up for dances and events and concerts and stuff like that. But yeah, none of those buildings were like huge buildings. Like in Macon and Columbus and Augusta, we worked the city arena, but the rest of them in Atlanta, we worked the city arena. But none of the others we didn't. It was like we called them spot shows, but these were spot shows every week. So in Georgia, they ran Augusta, Macon, Columbus, Atlanta, Savannah. They were weekly towns. They ran every week. Savannah was the farthest one. And boy, that was a hell of a trip. But that's where I learned to work. And, none of them stand out. They're all equally secretive of their own.
Got time for one or two more, I think. Stephen says, I heard the story about how Jerry Jarrett split away from Nick Goulas and formed CWA in 1977, and then Nick Goulas closed up shop about 3 or 4 years later. I was just curious what happened with Nick during those years. Did he realise the mistakes he made, not giving Jerry Jarrett more control? I believe Jerry was paying him for what he thought was part ownership of the territory, which turned out to be not the case. And if Jerry ever spoke to Nick in later years. So sort of the wilderness years, I guess, for Nick after the split.
To catch the people up that don't know what we're talking about, Tennessee was a territory one time. It was owned exclusively by Nick Goulas. Nick Goulas, and he's the father of the worst wrestler I've ever seen too. George Goulas was his son. And that's why George got into the business and actually killed his father's business because he was so bad. But But Jerry Jarrett, his mother worked in the office with Nick, and that's how he broke into the business. And he must be a hell of a salesman, because he would go to Memphis every week and he would sell programs. And this was when Jerry Jarrett was about, I guess, 16, 17 years old. And he did well. And his mama, she also ran shows too. And I think he went to his mother and said he would like to see if he could take over Memphis and Louisville and Evansville. And I think somehow they got him an audience with Nick, and Nick came in, and that's who he started. He started booking Memphis, and Memphis took off. That's when he started pushing Lawler, and Lawler took off. And finally, it got to the point where Lawler and Jarrett were saying, damn, he's making all the money, and we're doing all the work. So they actually, this cold turkey, and this took a while now, went, they pulled apart from him. So now, and they got their own TV in every one of these towns, and they started running against Nick. And it didn't take long. It took about, I would say, 2 years, maybe less, that Nick was losing money and he had to close up. So Jerry Jarrett, and I don't think they paid Nick that much when they pulled apart. They just pulled apart. I don't think they paid him anything because there was nothing to pay him for. Because if Nick was running across town at another station, you know, if I paid somebody, I want them to get out of town. Nick never got out of town till he was chased out of town. But so that made Jerry Jarrett a wealthy man, because he was making some years there $3 million a year. And back in the 80s, that was a lot of money. That's equal to 12, 15 million now. So, and that's how it worked out.
I don't know. I've heard of it before vaguely. I couldn't really add anything more to it. But did Jerry Jarrett think he was paying for points in the company at one point, and then Nick just said, absolutely not?
I've read that. They had a deal, and Nick, which is not hard to believe, reneged on the deal. And since he, like, screwed me once, shame on me, screwed me twice, or whatever. What's that saying?
Shame on you. Shame on somebody.
Yeah. Oh, shame on somebody. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I figured Jerry Jarrett got screwed, and Jarrett had pushed Lawler so much that what he needed was just a big name to go with him. And they started out. I was with them when they started out. I quit Nick too. I was working for Nick, and we were told, said, go give you notice. Don't just walk out on him, because now that's a legal point he could have. And this was years and years ago. And then Jarrett started running his towns with his different booking philosophy, and it worked. Now he could take it to the TV shows. And put it on there, and Nick couldn't hang with him. Of course, Jerry Jarrett got more of the talent because the guys like Jerry Jarrett more than they like Nick Goulas. So he got the bulk of the talent, and the rest is history.
I'm trying to think who stayed with Nick.
Tojo stayed.
And Fargo?
And Fargo. But see, you can only use those. You can only use Fargo back in those days. He wasn't every day. You could only use Fargo once every 3-4 months. Because, of course, he was older then. He didn't want to do it. See, Jackie Fargo was a big-time bookie. That's where he made his money. It was a football season, big season, and he'd lay it down and rake it in. And basketball and baseball, but mostly football. And he actually got rich just being a street time a street side bookie. Guys would just they all knew where he lived. They just go over there and lay their bets down, or you call him up and he just mark you down. You just had to be sure if you lost just to pay him, or you wouldn't bet anymore. But his two guys that could have helped him more, and who wrestling fans recognized the name, was Tojo and Jackie, and they went with Nick. But then later on, when Nick closed up, Jarrett, he brought him in because he knows them. He brought Jackie in. Jackie drew a big house. He brought in Tojo. Tojo drew a big house. So he in the wrestling business. This is the thing about the wrestling business. I've heard guys said, "Weren't you working for, say, Jerry Jarrett?" And they say, "Yeah, I quit. That son of a bitch, blah, 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 blah." Just cuss him like a dog. "I'll never work for that son of a bitch again." Then you bring it up to Jerry Jarrett. You say, "Hey, what about the guy? Screw him. I'll never book that son of a bitch. I don't give a shit. I'm done with him. Just done." Well, let about a year go by, and the territory drops down a little bit. They're not drawing anymore. And this guy over here, he's in all the territory. It's not doing. He's looking for a place to go. They called Jerry up, and Jerry just called him a son of a bitch. And they hated each other a year earlier. "Hey, Jerry, Bill here. Bill, how you doing, buddy? Where are you? Blah, 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 blah. Hey, you want to make a move? Well, I was thinking about it. Hey, won't you come here?" And that's it. As soon as he could get there, he'd be booked in.
I'm looking at a card from 1980 for Nick Goulis's territory, and there's a couple of names that stand out as young rookies at the time. Obviously, Bobby Eaton, who was saddled with George Goulis at the Jet Set, but also Coco Beware, or Coco Ware at the time. A couple more names: Hector Guerrero, Luke Graham, which is worth mentioning, Ken Lucas as well, and the Blonde Bombers, Larry Latham and Wayne Ferris.
Well, he had a little bit of talent, but Nick was known as really a bad guy to get you money from. He just wouldn't pay guys. And that's where guys, they wouldn't give a notice. They would just leave. Said, "Screw it, I'm out of here." Because they couldn't make enough money to continue. They couldn't make enough money to feed themselves and pay their bills. Yeah, he had a bad name in the wrestling profession. The only way you could work for Nick was get a straight up guarantee every week of what you were going to get, $600, $800, or whatever. And then as soon as that guarantee didn't make it, that's when you needed to leave right then. Common sense tells you that.
Couple more names I'm going to mention. Pat Rose. I don't know if I mentioned that before. Duke Myers. Rocky Brewer, which is an interesting name. But here's Gypsy Joe, which we've talked about before. He was there for quite a while in 1980. But one that I want to bring to your attention before we shut down the show, Gorgeous George Jr., who I think retired in 1980. I've never seen Gorgeous George Jr. in action.
I think this had to be a part of, I think it was the year may have been the year I wasn't there in 80, so I don't know where this card came from. So what town was this?
That was the fairgrounds in Nashville. And
that's a pretty big card for the fairgrounds too.
Yeah. Nick Goulis would shut up shop in 1980. Just to mention, George Goulis did wrestle a couple events for Georgia Championship Wrestling in 82. I've seen a video, or we saw a video of him in about 2000. He was awful, just as awful as he was in his prime, quote unquote. But then also, I've got to tell you this, George Goulis apparently got back into the ring, and we need to find the video, in 2023.
I think I've seen it.
No. Have you?
I think. I'll look for it.
Right, okay, right, we need to find it then. So 2023 SWF.
Do you think he's misnamed when I call him the worst wrestler I've ever seen?
No. No.
He's horrible.
No, he was absolutely awful. I mean,
he wrote me
easily.
He wrote me an email. He said, "I don't appreciate you calling me the worst wrestler in the business," and blah 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 blah.
Well, be better then. Be better than the worst wrestler in the business if you don't want to be called that. You were dog shit. Dog shit. And there's an interview out there where he's whining and crying about you and Jim Cornette, calling him, worst wrestler. Well, they only called me the worst wrestler because I was the promoter's son. It's like, Bret Hart's a promoter's son. He was great. various Von Erichs were promoter sons. They were great. There are various promoter sons and daughters who were wonderful. You are the worst.
I'm going to give the wrestling schools a hint here. Get a tape or a video of George Goulas and play it every time you open that training session up. Try not to at least be better than him, at least. And I'll consider your training a success if you just get better than this guy here. He was horrible. He gave horrible interviews. He had a lisp, and people just... He was embarrassing. He really was.
He had a pigeon chest. Awful. In every... You just a zero across the board. Right, okay.
He used to do this. He would used to say the Kiwanis Club. You've heard of the Kiwanis Club?
No.
Okay, it's a club in town. They do something. Or the Rotary Club or something. It's a citywide like city club. But he would go in there and he would want to play basketball before the wrestling match. And he would go in there and he'd get his own little team together. And the Kiwanis Club, they get their own. But he would get some of those Vanderbilt, just ex. They were through playing basketball, but they were really good. And he would go in there with some of those guys, and they'd beat the team like 80-10. And he'd laugh about it. Well, they remembered it. So one time, this team got together, this little town. They want to play him again. They got some college players too, and they went in there and they beat George's team. He got so mad, he pitched a hissy fit and said, "We're not even wrestling here tonight." They just took the ring up, loaded it back up, and left. They didn't even have the matches.
So they didn't get to see George Goulas wrestle. He probably did him a favor.
Oh, no kidding.
Lord Almighty. Well, Daddy said sell, and Daddy said this podcast is done for the week. We will see you again on Wednesday now for the next episode of Story Time with Dutch Mantell, and Sunday for Ask Dutch Anything. That's going to be the new schedule from now on. Once again, questions for dutch@gmail.com if you want to submit a question for a future episode. Until then, we'll see you on Wednesday. Dutch, we the people.
That's it.